Dr. Baker and Dr. Reyes. So for the youth minister who is like, man, I really, really need to do something about violence in my youth group or with the youth I work with, and they want to leave here and just go do a concrete thing, what concrete things would you suggest for them? What would be first steps that you would offer them to think about ministering to their youth who may be dealing with violence right now?
Well, I think the easiest one, I think you already gave the answer in your question, which is the first steps, our steps.
Mm-hmm.
We hosted a community forum in Chicago. This would have been, I don't know how long ago, maybe a year, yeah. And we had Pastor Phil Jackson there, and one of the things he said was, you got to walk the block. That was his line. So I think, walking your block, knowing who's in your physical location, knowing their lives, knowing what conditions they're working with, who their families are, who their networks are. I mean, getting a picture of where you are is the best thing I think a youth pastor can do, is just to know the block first and foremost. Yeah.
So the other thing I would say is, there are two things I would say. One is, whenever you have a group of young people gathered, for whatever event it is, know that 1 in 4 of them is going to be touched by some kind of violence. 1 in 4 is the number for sexual violence among girls. It's different with boys. But I remember very early just remembering that no matter what the group looks like, no matter what my preconceived notions of them are, violence touches this community too. Yeah. Sexual violence, domestic violence, it has no space. It's going to be everywhere. And then the other thing I would say to youth ministers is, and this is the thing I'm most excited about this curriculum that we're talking about and developing, is pay attention to where the ways of Jesus are being lived out in your community already in relation to violence. And if that's a secular agency, if it's the YMCA, wherever you find people who are doing the work of disrupting cycles of violence, befriend them, get to know them, discern that, yes, this is a community that is embodying Christ, whether they name it that way or not, and then come alongside it. You don't have to own it. You don't have to develop it. You don't have to be the driving force. But how do you put your energy behind what is good? Yeah. And what does good look like in your community around the violence that you now know young people are experiencing, and align yourself with that. Set your budget around it. Convince your church to budget around it. Yeah. Become involved in the councils in your local government, and find out how money is being allocated to create pathways for young people to emerge from the systems of violence that they're caught in. So we give some case studies in our work, and one of the primary ones that we like to look at is the Freedom School movement that the Children's Defense Fund launched. It creates spaces that are radically alternative to the public education system, which is a dying and crumbling system. And into those young lives, it interjects joy and hope through music, through culturally sensitive inspiration to want to learn. And it changes the lives of young people, 167,000 of them and counting. And just this very week, they're training their new group of servant leaders in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we're very encouraged about programs like that the church can just come alongside and pour resources into. Resources of time, food, communal meals, and money.
When I went back home to do some research around these conditions, the questions around that, I went to the fields or the packing sheds or even just community centers to ask people what gave them life in these kind of conditions that seemed like there wasn't a lot of capacity for it. And as I was coding all these interviews and thinking about all the themes that were showing up from people I love and care about, family members, cousins, community members, the same. When I get to the place around, or the question around space, where do you go? Where do you actually spend your time? The same place kept popping up, and it wasn't a church, it wasn't community center, it wasn't the library, all places that the community would go to. It was the soccer fields on Saturday. So I'm sitting here thinking about a study in religion and theology and Christian theology, looking at this glaring example of Saturday, which is, we think about Holy Saturday as a space to hold between when the violence that happens on Good Friday and the resurrection comes on Sunday. But Saturday is this place to hold as sacred and holy. Yeah. And in my community, they were holding it for soccer. I mean, like, this is where everyone showed up. And so when I think about all the next generation, where they're going to be on Saturday, that's where you got to be. It's at the soccer fields. And to celebrate that, they're, more likely to do a Ronaldo jump up in celebration after a goal than they are to come to a youth group and hear Pastor Pat try to rap, which is not a thing. I can't connect with them the same way. But if I go and I show up to soccer on Saturdays, I can participate in the conditions that are already joyful in a way that's authentic to my community and a place where they're actually finding life. So that's one of my other encouragements, to echo what Dori was saying around go to where they already are and, ask where that space is and then show up and encourage all the other people that you're working with in the institutional life to show up. Showing up on Saturday soccer is the best thing ever. Pull up that lawn chair, get some food, watch the kids smile and kick a ball. I mean, it's great. So, yeah.
That reminds me of something I've said for a long time about my own vocation. I call myself a spy for hope, and I want to encourage more youth ministers to be spies for joy. And if that happens in the soccer field, if it happens in the place where people come together to feed those who don't have food, be on the lookout for it. Create 501(c)(3)s that do the work of God, or go to those nonprofits and hang out in those places. And by virtue of the relationship that is built, when people need guidance in how to mourn their losses or how to celebrate their joys, then you're their friend and they know how to find you. And it's not some weird thing. It's very organic. You're my friend, and you know how to guide me through this. That's what we reap from sowing the energy. We also reap the loveliness of being there for that leap and that joy, but we're also building relationship that's mutual.
I love what you're saying. I feel very passionate about Beyond the Walls ministry. I feel like it's something that gave me life growing up. There are so many youth ministers who have a very traditional way of looking at youth ministry. Youth ministry is in the church. Youth ministry is with my youth group. And what you're doing is pushing for looking at youth ministry more broadly. All children are our children. What would you say to the youth minister who might have a very particular way of looking at where youth ministry should be taking place or what youth ministry is? How do you counter maybe some of their fears they may have for extending and broadening their understanding of what youth ministry is?
For me, and I think I won't speak for him, I'll let him speak for himself. For me, it is both and. We need formation. We need really good formative spaces where people learn the Christian story and learn it in their bones so that they can embody it themselves on the soccer field or in their hallways of their classrooms or as they're changing a baby's diaper. I mean, all those places, it's both and. We need the formation, and I just want to challenge that youth minister to, I think you almost just quoted Audre Lorde, which is how we end our workshop with, our goal should be improving the lives and making more rich the lives of our children. And the question that Jesus poses is, who are our children? Who are our neighbors' children? How do we love our neighbors' children as we love our own? And so it's not a either or, it's a both and I just want to encourage that youth minister to come along on that journey. And it's risky business. Sometimes you need to take a friend. Sometimes you need to find a friend who's already doing that and humble yourself and say, I have a beginner's mind. Show me. It's the way we've transitioned from, many youth ministries have transitioned from the kind of toxic Christianity, the toxic mission model, to one that's much more come alongside and befriend and don't be my savior, be my companion.
Right.
I think we're calling for something very similar.
Right.
And it shows up. I mean, I go back to my own experience of youth ministry as a young person. I remember going every Thursday night to this youth ministry, namely because I was dating a girl that she invited me to go, so I would always go, and it's the only time I really plugged in. But I think after like a year and a half of something going along this, I saw the youth minister at my high school graduation, and I had a great celebration. There's the little award ceremony that went around after, and I remember seeing him after. He thankfully remembered my name. He walked up and said, "Patrick, you're like smart." And I said, I guess, yeah. Why are you saying that now? Like, you've known me for a year and a half. And he goes, well, I only see you on Thursdays. And so that for me is like one of those indicators that you had no idea who I was. Right. I was at your traditional Thursday space, which was a great space. I had tons of fun.
Right.
I loved the worship. I loved the music. I loved being invited. That was a great space on Thursday night. But I have, 6 other days of the week that I'm like living out my life. And young people are pulled by 900 different emotions and 900 different motivations to do other things. Not always all of them good either. I mean, our topic
Right.
is violence. So for me, the narrative is being interrupted by violence. So if you think a ministry program once a week or twice a week is going to interrupt or disrupt these cycles of violence that young people are experiencing, I mean, I would just say you're missing out big time on at least the majority of a young person's life. So really taking the time to get involved and ask and spend time where they are when they're not in your building, it shows you're showing up. It shows that you're committed to the person, and hopefully you don't have a snafu like where you come up at someone's graduation or big celebratory event saying like, I didn't really know you. That's bad youth ministry.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad theology in general. That's bad relationships. So showing up is the most important thing, and I think young people who feel that from someone that cares about them, especially youth ministers who a lot of young people look up to. Showing up, it means a lot, especially more than just their traditional programs.